Hello, Four Star Nation, and welcome to a special Monday, May 24th episode. We welcome in the athletic director and head football coach of the Crossett Eagles, Mr. Coach Shawn Jackson. Coach, how are you doing, sir?
I'm great, man. How are you guys?
Oh, man, we're doing well for a Monday. Doing well for a
Yes, sir.
Monday.
Yes, sir.
Four Star Sports Show brought to you by BA Masks. For more information, reach out to bamask.com. You can also give them a follow on social media at BA Mask. They are the leading, just forging the future of face mask across the football landscape, lacrosse, and others. Justin Tuck is a guy who is a big proponent of BA Mask, wore his mask yearly in the NFL. But BAMask.com, reach out to him. Got Coach Shawn Jackson on the line with us tonight. Coach, let's talk a little bit of college football on the national landscape. I asked this question to Cole Kubilek the other night when we had him on. Let me ask your opinion on the transfer portal as we know it, which I feel like is essentially just a free agency. But give me your input on or insight, on the transfer portal, and what do you think it's going to do to college football moving forward?
When I coached at the University of Missouri, you had your 85 guys, and then when they started with you, that's who basically ended up there. Very few people transferred because of the penalty, and you were able to develop players. The transfer portal makes it really, really hard on college coaches to develop players. Over time, like you might take a kid that's a red shirt, he was a freshman, and then get him ready, and then he's playing by his sophomore year. Well, now if he's not playing by then, he's out of there. So developing players makes it really, really hard on college coaches right now. And what's going to happen is you're going to see their tenure get smaller, and their contracts get longer and their buyouts get bigger because they know the way the landscape is right now in college football. And so, if Gary Templeton said one time, if I ain't starting, I ain't departing. So that's the way it ends up being, and people end up leaving and transferring and going to other places, and it makes it tough on football coaches in general.
All right, next question. When it comes to the college football landscape, this NIL, I'm sure you're very familiar with what I'm referring to. How do you think that's going to play out? And let me ask you this. How can you really police that? I've got so many questions when it comes to this topic.
Yeah.
How can you police it, but also give me your opinion on
it? I don't see there's any way that you can police it. And your name and your likeness is your name and your likeness. And I've never understood why any of those kids wouldn't be able to profit off that over time. Especially. Look at how much money, let's say, Tim Tebow would have made when he was at college at the University of Florida. But then, some of that goes back to your school too. But I see there's no way to be able to police it. Let's look at Justin Fields last year, Trevor Lawrence last year, for example. If that was in play, then wouldn't they have had to have an agent? They would have had to have somebody professionally to manage their money with everything that was going on. So then the question to me of amateurism comes into play. Is he a college player? Is he a pro player? What is he? Is he in the middle of the road there? So that's really, really hard. And then, how much do at what point is it going to be like, are they going to school? And then another thing is, when's enough? Like a kid that goes to the University of Missouri for 5 years gets a $250,000 scholarship, all the food he can eat, all the clothes basically he can wear, and he's got a great education. So, at what point is it enough? Maybe.
Let me ask you this, Coach. Speaking of a school like University of Missouri, take for instance, I'll just use Trevor Lawrence for example. In my opinion, the brand is what is going to turn out to make this NIL the biggest deal, because if you're Trevor Lawrence and you're at Clemson, you can get a Pizza Hut deal. But my question is this: what if you're Trevor Lawrence and you got a Pizza Hut deal in Clemson, South Carolina, or whatever their city is, and then all of a sudden Trevor Lawrence says, "Hey, I don't want to play here anymore. I want to go play for Nick down in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, but yet he's still got a contract tied with this pizza company, but that pizza company is not in Tuscaloosa. I just feel like there's more roadblocks in this than there is anything else.
Yeah, and then the thing about it is how transparent is all that going to be? And then
Right.
you have to turn over your W-2 forms then to the NCAA, and they have to know everything that's in your financial background, and is that any of their business?
Right.
So it's the NCAA is a tough deal, man. I remember I got in trouble one time when I was at the University of Missouri through compliance because I sent a media guide to a kid in Texas. It's just stuff like that.
Yeah.
You got to just, you got to be careful. The NCAA, there's good and bad in that, the way that I see it. And it's, I don't think anybody can win in the situation. It's not a win-win situation.
Well, I mean, in my opinion, you're taking the power out of the university's hands and you're putting all the power in the players' hands. I mean, like, for example, we saw, I believe it was a player in the Pac-12. The players out there were demanding half of the revenue from the TV contract. I mean, it's just crazy. But Coach, go ahead.
No, it's just, and then what ends up happening though, Wes, is coaches become harder and harder. So then you got people that's demanding half of the TV contract, and then they'll play 2 years, and then they'll set out their sophomore year and won't even play, getting ready for the NFL. You know what I mean? And they've demanded all this money, but yet they're not playing for that institution. Yeah. So that's what makes it really, really hard.
One last question on the college football front, and then we'll get over into Crossett. This kind of ties into high school. I saw a report last week, I believe, that a player in Texas was going to sit out his senior year of high school to get ready for college. Now, as far as I know, this is the first time I've ever seen this happen. What, as a high school coach, how do you approach something like that? I mean, what is your firepower back at it?
You're helpless as far as that goes. Here's what happens to as soon as I saw that, I shared that email with all the coaches. And to be honest, I've saw that coming for a while, Wes, when people started skipping bowl games. And then there's a cute code word for, opting out has become a code word for quitter. So now people opt out and they quit on their team. And like let's take Ed Orgeron, for example. Everybody's breathing down his neck really hard this year. Well, he had the first pick in the draft, the best quarterback, had the best season in so many years. And then, the best wide receiver, Jamar Chase, he just decides not to play. And there's two or three other draft picks that don't play. When you lose draft picks, coaches get fired. Yeah. So here's what's going to happen to the coach in Texas. They're not going to remember that kid skipped his senior year and he quit on his teammates. What they're going to remember is that year is, hey, you guys went 5-5 or 4-6. You didn't get it done. Pack up your stuff. We're hiring somebody else. So that makes it really, really hard on coaches, because if you lose a kid like the kid was a 4-star running back going to Texas, well, you're not replacing him. Right. And you built your offense kind of around him, and you built your scheme around him, and then the next thing he's out of the picture because he's getting ready to go to Texas. And then my question to Sark would be this: is that, all right, so what are you going to do after 2 years when he sits out and he doesn't play his junior year for you? Or what if he doesn't feel like it's, he's got to beat Oklahoma to keep his job there? Everybody knows that. So he gets ready to go play Oklahoma, and then he's not feeling like playing that day. He's opting out of playing against Oklahoma that day. And then the next thing they get beaten and he's fired. So at what point there has to be accountability on both ends. I get it. I don't know what the answer is at the end of the day, but in order for football players to get better, they have to play. In order for coaches for the team to get better, the players have to play, and the coaches have to coach. It's that simple.
Yeah, and I mean, and with the Texas kid, I mean, if you're Sark, do you bring him in now? I mean, technically, I guess you can. He's sitting out his last year. Do you bring him in now, or do you make him sit at home?
This happened a couple of years ago. a guy that I know really well, but a friend of mine, Bobby Bentley. He took a job at South Carolina, and his son Jake was going to school down there in Alabama. And Bobby left and went and became the wide receivers coach or running backs coach at South Carolina. So Jake went with him, and Jake skipped his senior year, and then he graduated early, and everything was set and ready to go. And when that happened, I kind of saw that kind of stuff going on. So the deal is if he's graduated and he's done there, then you might as well go on and have him start playing for you now, because I don't know how he's going to get better uh, by not playing football, by not being in the program. It's been my experience, Wes, that when coach, when kids get away from football, their grades go down, the other things come into their life. And Coach Pinkel used to have a rule there. He called it distraction control there at the University of Missouri. And boy, when you're not playing football, there are a whole lot of distractions for that kid. And I just hate it for him. I wish he would just go and play football and let everything fall where they may, and not get, because he's bringing a lot of heat on himself, I think, from this.
Yeah, most definitely. Well, Coach, let's talk a little bit about, the school that's right across the street from my house, Crossett High School. Last year, you had a great year. It was your first season here. It was one of those things where you just kind of came in and, you kind of took what you had and made the best out of it. Moving into this season, you've had a full season with the guys. How are we looking for next year?
It's I'm really, really pleased with these kids. Love ball here, man. There's no other way to describe that. And last year we didn't have a off season. I mean, we literally barely lifted weights, and because of all the COVID protocol, and then we went out there in August and just basically went out there and played. So ever since then, at the end of football last year, the off-season process started, and we've got a lot bigger and a lot stronger and throughout and we really, really needed that as a program here, just because they were off for so long. Heck, it's science says a kid loses strength after 1 week. So imagine how when we went from March to June, and then barely you couldn't even live for the spotter, Wes. I mean, it was embarrassing to say it, but we became a CrossFit gym just to be able to get in shape, a little bit in June and July. But we've grown as a football team. We're growing as a program. We've been able to keep all the coaches that were with me last year, so there ought to be some continuity and carryover from this point forward. And I can't wait to really get going when we come back in July.
Yeah, I mean, and one thing, of course, my wife's a teacher over at the middle school, so I went and watched them a good bit last year. Like a young man like a Max Brooks, for example, just the way he ran that offense at the middle school level. I mean, is he? And I'm, not necessarily want to talk about players, but I mean, is he a guy that? I mean, I feel like he's definitely a weapon. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, you got just kids in general. I mean, we've got a lot of the one thing that we did different when I got here is we combined the middle school and the high school. That way, we had our hands on all the middle school kids every day. We coached. Vincent Newton coached everybody in the program every day. So it wasn't this high school, middle school deal. It was Crossett, and we were trying to get the kids better. But, we're not shy of talent here from the skill level standpoint. Tyreek Jones is coming back was an all-state quarterback last year. Had a really, really good year. Jackson Moore is back. Dwayne Ashford's back, on offense. Tayshawn Pascal had a 90-yard run in our sectional game against Monticello at running back. He's back. So we have a bunch of we return every skill player, every starter at the skill position next year. So I'm looking I'm really, really excited to see how much we've grown. We've got to get better at what we do. Fundamentally, we weren't very sound, and that had to do with the layoff. We got to improve those things, but I'm looking forward to seeing how much we've improved when we get going.
as far as the defensive side of the ball is concerned, last year, Coach, you were pretty gritty when it came to the trenches.
Yeah.
That's something that really spoke to me. Just being here for 4 years and watching teams previous. You seem to make the trenches a focal point on offense and defense. Talk a little bit about your defense coming up.
Everything starts with the big. You're only as good as the big people. You can outrun everybody, but you still have to win up front. So what we had to do was we had to change things a little bit and play people on the offense and defensive line. So we lost Nick Goodwin and Tristan Smith up front, which were two really really good players. But we returned uh, JT and Nick JT and Dylan Cootie and Chandler Odom, and we've got some really, really good young players. DJ Johnson is going to be a college player one day. Larry Morris is going to be a college player one day up front. Brendan Brown moved over to us from Hamburg. He has Division One. He has TV Saturday capabilities as far as that goes. So we're getting better with our big people up front. Chase Golden started every game for us last year. He's going to be a really, really good football. He's going to have a really, really good senior year. So, we're looking forward to our guys up there. We need more. Everybody, it's the thing. When I was coaching in South Georgia, you'd have 300 people that signed Division One scholarships or that 247 sports ranked. And the University of Miami had come up there for us looking for O linemen and D linemen. So everybody needs O linemen and D linemen. Everybody needs more of them. We need more of them, but we just got to take the kids that we've got and we've got to develop them and make them bigger and stronger and better football players and go from there.
Yeah, most definitely. Coach, you talked about it just a few minutes ago when you said you came in, you merged high school and middle school. I've always felt that that's probably the best thing to do. Talk a little bit about why you made that decision for Crossett.
Well, it's always been a simple concept for me is you can't have one group speaking Spanish and another group speaking Japanese and then get them together and they're fluent in English. Everybody has to be on the same page. Everybody has to speak the same language in order to be fluent in it. And that's it as a nutshell. And then they have to know what our expectations are. They just can't get to high school and it's feel like that they're dropped off on another planet. They have to know me. They have to know the coaches. They have to know the weight program, our system, how we do things, how we practice, how we hold people accountable. So that's the big deal to me is they have to know our system. They have to know our beliefs, and they have to be able to speak our language. And if you have separate entities like that, then everybody's not on the same page. And, when you run an organization from top to bottom, it has to be in line. And if it's not in line, then you're not going to be successful. So the secretary has to speak the same language that I speak. And that's the same as the middle school center has to speak the same language as the high school center in order for everybody to be successful.
Great point. Shawn Jackson joining us tonight from Crossett High School. He's the athletic director and also the head football coach. 4-Star Sports Show brought to you by BA Masks. For more information on just the best mask made right now, Alan McFerrin and them do a great job. Reach out to bamasks.com. Coach, last question for you. It's a two-part question. And it all revolves around the city of Crossett. First part of the question is talk a little bit about what brought you to Crossett. And second part of the question is tell our viewers and listeners a little bit about what makes the city of Crossett such a great city.
My dad died 2 years ago, and I told my wife that we were going to try to get back closer to home. I grew up in southeast Missouri, and I had read Barry Switzer's book. Oh, I hadn't read it. It was an audio book, and I had listened to it. It seemed like it was probably a month or two before I saw the posting here. And my mentor is Rick Jones. That's at Greenwood High School. And I saw this job came open, and I contacted him, and then we talked about it and looked at the lay of the land down here. And then that's how that came to pass. I got a lot. I was 16 or 17 hours, something like that, maybe shorter than that from where I grew up. When I moved here, I got 5 or 6 hours away from home. The second part about it is everybody that's I've came in contact here has been awesome to me. Really, really friendly, really, really nice people. The principal that I work with now, Anthony Boynton, he's been the best I've worked with so far. He's been awesome, and Mr. Williams, the superintendent, he was amazing to me. Both them interviewed me. We had several. They did their due diligence. We had several Zoom meetings and one in-person interview, and you know, they basically answered every question. Dotted all the I's and crossed the T's before I got here. And what ends up happening, Wes, is when you're in interview processes, you sit there and you ask them, you say, well, what's behind door number 2? Everybody wants to tell you, all the great thing about this and that and the other. But everywhere has problems. And I didn't have to ask them those questions when I got here. They told me what the ins and outs were of everything. I wasn't led down the wrong path. And then everybody was just straight up front and honest, as far as that goes. And then the kids here to me are special. It's a throwback to me. One of the reasons, I'm a big time ball in South Georgia, so quote unquote. But every time I turned around, we had this kid was going to Georgia and this one's going to here, and well, if he wasn't getting enough carries, he was going to IMG, or what I mean. It's just stuff like that. And when I came here, it's really, really refreshing, and because they're ball players. They love ball. They sit in here with me in the office every night, 6, 7, 8 o'clock at night till I leave. I'm writing a thing right now for next year's graduation, and it's called "They Rode Up in Bikes," and it's a story about when I met these kids. Because when I was first here, I would hear somebody. We had all the COVID stuff, and they would text me and say, "Coach, we're outside," and they would all of them had ridden up on bikes. And I would walk out of the building and I would go out there and stand by the gate and we would talk for a long time. So that's how I got to meet everybody. They would be banging on the door, Coach. They couldn't come in here and I couldn't bring them in here. So we would go basically out there and just stand by the road every night and talk. It seemed like forever sometimes. And that's how I met everybody. And that's my memory of these kids, and all we ever talked about was ball. They love football. They love sports here, and it's really, really refreshing to me.
Well, Coach, I tell you one thing, man. I'm just watching last year through streaming. With COVID and everything, y'all streamed a lot of games. But I am really looking forward to next football season for the Crossett Eagles. I think it's going to be another very successful year. And I'm really enjoying to see just how far you can take this program.
Yes, sir. I appreciate it, man. We're looking forward to it. We can't wait to really get cranked back up when we get here in July, man.
Good deal. Well, I will make sure that 4-Star Sports Show is across the road covering a few Crossett Eagles games next season for sure. Once again, I am Wes Pruitt. Shawn Jackson has graced us with an amazing interview tonight. Talked a little college football. Talked a little life for that matter, and talked a little bit of Crossett Eagle football. Once again, Coach Jackson, thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks, Wes. Thanks for having me, man.